there, welcome back. I'm going to do another Hammer triple bill, where basically I'm going to look at one of their typical titles, which is Kiss the Vampire. Then I'm going to look at some of the other movies they made, which are available in the box sets from Indicator, but also now individually as titles. So I'm going to look at the Pirates of Blood River and the Brigand of Kandahar. Now, doing this is appropriate because Hammer did a lot of double bills. Like sometimes they make a film like Cash and Demand, which was a lower half of a double bill in the cinema, and sometimes they did have double bills of Hammer films. Like famously, like they made Dracula, Prince of Darkness, Rasputin the Mad Monk, The Reptile, and Plague of the Zombies, all as a package to be two double bills, and that's how they financed them. So Hammer were actually very aware of the British distribution system and how to get some films through and make some money off films that maybe weren't the top level ones, but where you can make it a budget and make some decent money off. And basically when that stopped, that was some of the financing Hammer actually did well off, just gone. Because by doing these like 80-minute films, they could, sometimes it was based on a play, sometimes it was based on a novel or a TV drama that they realised you could remake and sell to America. If you kept the budget down, they could do some fun films with some good actors and have some good directors do little films that they might want to do that are not just a vampire film or a Frankenstein film. You know, you could give directors a chance to expand. So I mean, people like Val Guest, he never really did the typical Hammer film, but he got to do with Hammer and with other producers in the system a lot of fun little films that were like, for Hammer did Quatermass and Quatermass 2 and Yesterday's Enemy and things like that, and also for other films he did, other producers, he did the Death Court Fire. So he did a lot of good stuff and could have a good career doing films that maybe didn't jump out people as being like the top grosser of the year, but they were creating a solid body of work where you could go, there's things that are running through these films, and directors interested. Now John Gillian, who did two of these three films, he also was in this British system, and he managed to eke out a living in the 50s in the lower budgets, and also working with production companies doing slightly bigger budget films in Britain. And eventually he'd worked with Hammer on and off over the years, but eventually in the 60s Hammer saw he turned into a good director, so he got a lot of work. And to be honest, he's one of my favourite of the Hammer directors, because he did a lot of films I rate quite highly. Like Plague of the Zombies is one of the best Hammer films. The Reptile's terrific. The Shadow of the Cat, which I covered a few weeks ago, is a very good film. And these two films I'll cover with him are good films. Again, they show some range and some interest. But I'll be lying if I didn't say Kiss the Vampire is my favourite of the three. Kiss the Vampire is a film that was made pretty much in between Dracula, Brides of Dracula, and then before Dracula came back with Dracula, Prince of Darkness. This was a film, like a filler film, really, like, well, Hammer, let's do another vampire film, really. And it felt like there was bits of it that were script elements were thinking of it for Dracula that they never managed to do, or whatever. It just felt like there was a lot of stuff that came over from what they've been doing in the Dracula films, especially Brides of Dracula, which had a lot of, like, it was less narratively focused, but there's a lot of interesting weird tangents. So even though it's not as good as Dracula, it's really enjoyable, even though it's paced in a kind of weird way. The high points are so good that the kind of middling parts of the film don't really matter, because the good stuff really delivers. Kiss the Vampire is kind of similar, although I would say Kiss the Vampire I like a little bit more than Bride of Dracula, because I think it's more streamlined and it knows what it's going to be, and it has, I think it has some consistent character beats, where I think Brides of Dracula was very inconsistent. They had really great strong points, but the weak points were a bit more of a drag to sit through. Of course, Bride of Dracula had Peter Cushing, but this Kiss the Vampire has the bizarre advantage of not having recognisable Hammer names. All the actors are people who are in for this production. You know, it's not like you're seeing tons and tons of faces going, oh, that's him, oh, that's him. You don't get that in this one. You get a lot of different actors who may appear in a few Hammer films, and that was all. But it's really enjoyable. So there's this couple who, in a, you know, are travelling through the area, that's a European area, and who the car breaks down because it's the start of the motor cars, really. So it takes place well after the Dracula period. The car breaks down, and they end up going to a hotel in a village that is next to a castle, and the villagers seem who are basically hiding in their homes and are a little scared, but they're very kind of compromised by the whole situation because there's a vampire family nearby, and the vampires just rule the area, and the vampires see this couple and think, these interest us, let's play with them, because they want the woman, but the guy, they think, he's useless. Because to be fair, if you see the film and the actors playing these parts, yeah, I get it. I mean, this is a film where you're kind of with the vampires a little bit because they're more interesting. Of course, you have a savant who's like the fearless vampire hunter who's going to defend good, but he's also an alcoholic whose daughter was taken by them, and his daughter died. There's another couple in the hotel whose daughter was taken by the vampires, and they're all compromised by guilt and a sense of their lives destroyed. So it's a much more interesting sense of who are the people around the vampires. It's much more about the destruction these vampires cause. Well, the vampires themselves are having a great time in the castle. They're enjoying themselves. They're doing the various satanic curses and cult things, and they're having their parties. And a lot of the time, they seem to be enjoying themselves. They're very civilized. Again, that's what I said, is like, you're kind of on their side to a degree. Until they go into the we are the villains thing, they're much more enjoyable than anyone else. And the whole idea is these are people who are partiers who went way too far, and the lead vampire is someone who pushed himself so far he became a vampire and corrupted everyone around him. And so it's a kind of dark story, but there's a certain charm floating above all of that that's just wonderful. And it's just a great atmosphere. There's a party in the middle which is a masked party, and the funny thing is the vampires are all wearing masks, but they're wearing masks back to like humans. The only people who are the fools are basically two humans, and they're basically all plotting to get rid of the guy, basically. And it's an enjoyable sequence, and it does remind you a lot bit of Eyes Wide Shut. You know, because of the really great use of masks here. The masks are creepy and weird, and they do create this kind of weird feeling watching it. But there's also some other great bits. I mean, the various scrapes in to try and rescue the woman and to escape with her, and the chases through woods and things, all of which are done beautifully. And just the atmosphere of this film really helps. It's shot really well. It's just like they put some care into this one to make it look good. Like it felt like Hammer knew that the vampire films was their thing. That was the way they dominated. So they put the money and the effort into making sure it was good, and it really works. It's a really good film. I mean, the thing is, after this went back to Dracula, so it must have not done as well because there was no Dracula in it. And that was kind of the problem for Hammer, is they needed Dracula really to sell these vampire films. But in some of those Dracula films, the thing that kind of killed the plot was Dracula, because they had to keep him around but not have him too dominant, which would just frustrate Christopher Lee no end. But also, the plot always had to come back to Dracula, and sometimes in some of these other kind of films without Dracula, the plot could wander a little bit more into interesting areas. I mean, the Dracula film that did this the best was Taste the Blood of Dracula, where Dracula's not in it much, it's just his influence over the film really creates a lot of the distrust and unease feelings. That was the best one to actually use Dracula in a good way. But you kind of get a sense of Hammer were kind of frustrated with Dracula in a sense, is like, because he was a cash cow, but he's also a kind of character that was limiting the series. I mean, after the big success of Dracula, and then when they brought him back with Dracula Prince of Darkness, very successful character, but after that it was like, well, what do you do with him? And I don't think they'd made any real answers. So it was a tricky situation for them. They had to kind of be very careful with it. And I'm sure it was very frustrating for them sometimes. Because he was not a character like Baron Frankenstein, who you could put in different situations. You could find inventive ways around to put into other situations to do things that were interesting to the audience. And with Dracula, he's standing a corner and he's threatening. Great presence for Christopher Lee, but they never found that narrative drive to actually push him forward the way that Baron Frankenstein really had. But Kiss the Vampire, though, is a good example of what they could have done without Dracula in the film. It's like other vampires with other problems and being different, because each vampire they had outside of Dracula was always a different. Like, one was neurotic in Bride of Dracula, and in this one there's a guy who's very confident and very sly and humorous and very seductive, so it's a different feeling, which made the films really work. So now we're going on to the Pirates of Blood River, which is definitely one of the stronger, like, of the kind of pirate stuff they did with, like, Captain Clegg and things. This is one of the strongest ones. This was made by John Gillian, who I said was one of my favourite of the Hammer directors. It's got a very simple story, actually, and it's a pirate movie where the pirates only on the ocean for like 5 minutes in the whole running time. Because basically the idea is, what happens when pirates go into an island and they're trying to find treasure, and that's the plot. And you can do a lot with that if you have people who are desperate for money. Because essentially what happens is Kevin Matthews, who played Sinbad in an earlier movie for Ray Harryhausen, he's a guy on an island who is in love with a woman who's married to someone else, but they're in a community that's very religious. They left Britain and moved to a place which is a Colin Devon on an island, and they've got lots of trade, but within the island they've built things, they've become farmers, they trade with each other. They've got a successful life. It's not like full of riches, but everyone's doing well, but there's a sense of it's gone corrupt. The people in charge that have gone the way to the top are using power for themselves to kind of get paid back on their enemies. So there's a sense of things have gone a little bit wrong but have to change. But Kevin Matthews' character becomes a victim of this, but he falls in love with someone he shouldn't. They get caught. The woman tries to escape and she ends up going into a river that's full of piranhas, which sounds tacky. It is tacky, but it's wonderful for a Hammer film with piranhas. And you know they're going to come back later on in the film. So, Matthews is sent to a prison for 15 years, which is the prison bit of the island with the people who misbehave. So it's not an island without issues. There are people who misbehave and are sent there. So as the story's going on, you're seeing cracks in the surface of what's going on here. And a lot of time it feels that they're sent there for petty issues. There's the idea that there's some real corruption. And because Matthews is the son of someone who's very important, and he was hated as a child because he was the heir apparent, they're pretty brutal to him in the prison. He escapes after a fight with one of the guards who dies. Matthews escapes, where he runs into the pirates who have just landed. They take him back to the leader, played by Christopher Lee, who says they need somewhere to hide during the pirate. They need somewhere as a safe haven. But really, he's looking at this set up, and he's looking at who they were and what their belief system goes. There's money here. They're hiding some money, and what he does is he says but he doesn't say that to Matthews. He says to him, "Look, we just need someone to stay. We can give you some money to help your community, and just every so often we'll come back here and get some supplies and then go off again. It's just a place to rest for us." So Matthews believes him, the gullible fool, until we start to realise, once one or two people die, that they're killed by the pirates, and they realise some of the pirates are just rapists and horrible people. Yeah, this film is like, the pirates are horrible. There's no escape. After a couple of minutes, you realise these pirates are horrible. One of them is played by Oliver Reed, and he's really going for it. So basically, Matthews managed to get a warning sent to the sent ahead to warn them these pirates are coming, and then, but he's still prisoner of the pirates. That eventually the pirates get to the main area, they attack, they take over, and they're trying to find this what they feel is the treasure, and they're going to kill people until they give it up. And that's the film gets really interesting, because you start to see the various things these pirates come across as very unified. They're animals, but they come across as unified until they start drinking, and you start to see the petty natures of them come out, and the very petty jealousies, and the sense that things are not going well for them. Like, it's not as good as they're suggesting their lives are. It's a problem for them, and they're blaming each other, and they cannot find this treasure. And basically the film has Matthews help some of his people escape to create a resistance against them, and also he has to try and get to his father, because he knows these pirates will kill everybody. He says to his father, just give up the gold, wherever it is, just give it up. His father's a religious maniac, played by Andrew Keir, who will not do it, who calls his son the devil for suggesting such a thing. It turns out his father's a true believer, but his father's also very flawed, because he's sticking too close to his God, and he's not seen the corruption run about him. Well, Matthews is trying to protect the people. There are lots of raids and fights and things like that, and it's a very enjoyable film. I mean, I'm not going to go into it much further. I'll just say there's more piranhas, there's more intrigue. It's just a very good 80-minute film. You know, it's this sense it's always on point, it knows where it's going. A lot of the narrative is done very quickly and effectively. I mean, you could have done the early stage a bit slower to get to know characters a bit more, but the problem is Cameron Matthews is not a great lead for this film. He's basically the American star that's brought in. Even though he's not really a star, he's just someone who was in a Sinbad movie. He does okay. I mean, it's not like he's bad or anything. It's just the fact is like, you know, if this was Peter Cushing in this part, it would have been excellent, because you have someone who's really smart in dealing with problems, but Peter Cushing is probably too old for the part. But if Oliver Reed in the film, and if he was the guy who was and trying to protect his people, that would have been amazing. Instead, he plays one of the pirates, and he's amazing in one of the pirates. He's going way over the top, but it's wonderful, because it's Oliver Reed playing a pirate. And you've got Christopher Lee as the head pirate, and Michael Ripper as the sidekick, and they're both having a lot of fun. Now, Matthews and Lee did not get on. Apparently thought Lee was a terrible actor, and he was stuck up and thought he was great. I don't think Lee thought much of Matthews' acting skills. And honestly, when you watch the film, it's like Lee walks off the film every minute, because Lee's so much better. He's just like, he knows what his part is, he understands what he's doing, and he's very clear, and he's a threat. Even when he's under pressure with his own men, you can tell why he's the boss. And it's like, yeah, he just dominates the film. Andrew Keir as the father also dominates the other side. And it's the thing where it's just the best actors dominate. Michael Ripper's a lot of fun playing the sidekick of Christopher Lee, and he does not like him much. So there's lots of tensions there. The action scenes are all well made in a low budget. There's always a sense of progression with the action. It's just a really good B movie. I mean, that's the thing. It's like we have a pirate movie in a limited budget. What do we do? And they just find Jimmy Sangster wrote the original story, and other people rewrote it. But it's a simple setup: protect the fort and protect the treasure, and that's it. And it's like, what's the what's the end goal after that? I mean, I think John Gillian rewrote most of the scripts he worked on, and this, which gives a lot of his films a similarity, a sense of some authorship of someone who knows what he's interested in and they can throw out the stuff that doesn't interest him. Apparently, he was a hard taskmaster for the actors and the crew, but the films do have a drive to them, some of the other Hammer films don't have. You can always tell a Hammer film if someone's in charge who knows what they're doing, someone doesn't. Because the ones where the people know what they're doing, they have a drive to them, which this film has. So this is a really fun movie. I really enjoyed this one. I'd happily watch it again. I mean, there's a terrific fight scene with Oliver Reed and another guy where they're both blindfolded because they've both been fighting over this woman, and Lee decided to show his power by making him work for the duel. There's tons of fun things like that in the film. Finally, we have the Brigand of Kandahar, which is the weakest of the three films here. But it's not, it's still pretty enjoyable. Except for the fact that people are in blackface, including Oliver Reed, who's the whitest guy possible, playing an Indian. And it's that thing is like, British people and Indians have different body looks, especially when they're playing young men. British people are much stockier, just generally, they're less thin. And it's like putting makeup on a British guy, he still just looks like a British guy in makeup. He just does. Now, Oliver Reed plays a character who's meant to be educated in Britain, so thus he can have an accent that's more British, but the makeup's terrible, and Reed called this the worst film he's ever been in, which I doubt. I think he was just embarrassed by doing the blackface. I think even then it was like, are we really doing this? There are, Indian actors, like, why? And the lead actor is also he's playing half British, half Indian, but he's basically British with some makeup on. And he's not trusted by either side totally because he's a half caste. And that's an interesting part of the film. The situation's good, but the execution, because of these guys in blackface, isn't. You cannot unsee it. But John Gillian again wrote and directed this, and yet I feel he probably would have wanted Indian actors, but he couldn't get them, so he had to make do what he had. But it is the thing with it's about the colonialism in India, and it does not paint the colonials in a good light. Even though they win the battle in the end, not a surprise, they are not viewed as a good force. Pretty much, they even say at the end, most of this was your fault. You behaved terribly to the natives, you caused them to rebel, you're terrible to your own people when you caused so many deaths. It's basically your fault. And because there's a journalist character who comes and watches most of it, and he's like appalled by the behaviour of every side, because it's basically the idea of this guy who worked for the British as a scout, but no one trusts him. Then when he has an affair with the wife of one of his superiors, the superior's caught in battle. This guy comes back. They don't trust his testimony, and he's tried and found guilty of being a traitor. The guy escapes and goes to the other side. He finds the other side to be just as brutal as the British, but he's trapped. And it's the idea of it's a corrosion of a soul when you've got you can't be on either side. You're basically half caste, and you have bits of both sides, and both sides are corrupt. What do you do? In this case, he goes mad. He slowly becomes more animalistic, and even though he's trying to keep on to his ideals, everybody around him are backstabbing each other. Both sides are fighting the other, but also fighting people within themselves, because they've all got, each faction has, people try to be the leader of their own factions, plus people not liking each other and wanting revenge for certain things that have happened. So that's the thing with John Gillian films. People don't trust each other, even though if you're on the same side as someone, you might still want to kill them. And it's just really enjoyable for that kind of aspect, idea of being in a war where there's no real escape, there's no real way out, you are doomed. That's the best part of it. It's just that the blackface stuff just gets in the way. Oliver Reed's in it, but he's in and out. So it kind of feels like he was in it for the half the shooting time, and the rest of the time he was gone. and he just basically brought him in to do certain things and give a bit of personality to the film, because the film with the rest of it, because it's one of the kind of, it does have a feel of being a title that Hammer was making to fill a quota. Like they've got a lot of battle scenes that were from other films from the 50s, and you can tell because they don't look the same. There's sets that are obviously models. Like, they haven't spent that much money in a lot of this film, but John Gillen keeps it going just by sticking to the story and keeping up with that. But it is very compromised, just by the sets, by some of the casting. So it's one of those films like, you could remake this and make it good. It's just, the way they made it. It's also, it's like 80 minutes and does feel like it needs to be 2 hours. It does feel like there's things that could be explored more. Or even like an hour 40, there needs to be some more exploration of certain things. Like sometimes it just jumps too fast from one thing to the other. But it's still an enjoyable film. It's still like, it's not the worst film Oliver's ever made. Trust me, it's not. But I'm sure the blackface really embarrassed him. But yeah, all 3 of these films are worth watching, but especially Kiss the Vampire and Pirates of Blood River. They're the better films. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gets you interested in watching these films. I'll see you later. Bye.